I would like to refer us to like the ending of the first part of my book, Alien Goddess, when I actually had a vision when I was sitting in my garden with my dog, beautiful butterflies, hibiscus flowers and eucalyptus trees, but I'm scrolling on my mobile. And I had this vision, but it was more than a vision. It was actually feeling, I felt like I was splitting in half, like it was very strong experience when one part of me puts away the phone and stays in the garden and stay connected to the nature, and the other one gets sucked into this, technological temptation, and eventually, gets a chip in her head because, you have to do it for work, otherwise you slow. And I think it is happening, right? Because you don't work as fast as your colleagues and so on. And eventually she goes through different transhumanist versions of herself and becomes a computer program. And she has a digital child that calls her Shiva mother. And the child is angry with her because the child doesn't know what it is and what life is. Right? And this creation of a cyborg comes back at the end of the book. Also, so I don't want to give away the ending. However, I think that this is what actually is happening to humanity. So I agree with you. So some people call speciation, some people call bifurcation, when we actually split into separate species. So what happens there, it is that you have the same species and one part, decides to take this choice, the other one decides to take that choice. And then after enough time, they're two completely different species.
Yeah.
Right? So I think we have a transhumanist species, transhumanist humans, which will be the majority of people, I believe. And there will be small number of people, a definite minority, that will refuse this path. And, but definitely this will happen.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. I started to feel that real speciation split during COVID when these lines were being drawn. You either get the vax or you don't. If you don't, you're not going to be able to travel. You're not going to be able to take jobs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. You'll be looked down on by the other half who have gone along with the program. I really felt that line being drawn then. And I think this is somehow related or a continuation because the experimental RNA vaccines are a technology of a sort. So when I was reading your book, I could really relate to that feeling of being split. And I was surprised that you didn't include this quote from Wendell Berry, which I love and I repeat as often as I can because I think he was prophetic. This is from his book, Life is a Miracle. The quote is this: "It is easy for me to imagine that the next great division of the world will be between people who wish to live as creatures and people who wish to live as machines."
Oh, God. Yeah, it's very prophetic. It's
Yeah.
totally prophetic. Actually, I didn't know this quote. That's why I didn't include it. But it's completely prophetic, right? So I also very briefly speak about Ahriman, which is Rudolf Steiner, the Austrian German-speaking philosopher or theosophist, however you want to call him, where he was, and we do live right now in the age of Ahriman. Ahriman is exactly the age of technology. And for centuries, we're prepared through the worship of science. Right? Because science and science defined in very limited ways, right? Like something really measurable, materialistic, and so on, this form of science. So we are being seduced by technology. And he actually predicted that Ahriman will be born probably in the 1990s or so. So, people ask me, so who is Ahriman? I don't know. I have some ideas. Elon Musk is definitely too old for this. And I think that I don't know how people feel about it, I'm just expressing my opinion, out of this crazy trio, the mad trinity of AI, has some hope for sanity, I think, because at least at the beginning he was trying to oppose it. Do you understand?
I'm not so sure.
Yeah, you're not. I know. I'm asking what I'm saying, but for example, Peter Thiel, in my opinion, is completely mad.
Yeah.
He is
Agreed.
mad. Not that I would ever be in one room with him, but I would refuse if I could. Because I think this energy must be deadly. You know, his lectures on Antichrist and what he says when he says, you remember this interview that he gave him, says, is humanity worth saving? And he couldn't answer this. And then he starts to speak about, you know, turning penises into vaginas. You know, like, who is this guy? He's like a nutcake. You know, I think like he's actually completely demonic, you know, himself, like he's talking to dark forces. They overtook him. Okay. Like they overtook him.
Yeah.
And then there is the other one for OpenAI, and he's like a greedy, obnoxious child. You know, he has to go back to kindergarten and learn some rules, you know, but, you know, nobody's going to send him because he's rich and he's a, you know, smart businessman and so on.
I mean,